Joining me here on the Bear Report podcast to recap the big day out in Los Angeles, USCFootball.com staff writer Connor Morrissette. He was there covering it all. All of Chicago was tuned in on NFL Plus. Connor, first off, man, thanks for joining me. I know you've had a really busy day.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, let's get right into it. Caleb Williams Pro Day, the talk of Chicago, talk of the football world today. For those that really aren't familiar with pro days and why this was such a big deal, kind of just go through, what happened out there and how it's all kind of set up.
Sure. It was a big deal for Caleb. Well, first, he's the presumptive number one pick. So anytime he does anything, it's a big deal. He didn't throw at the combine, though. So the fact that he threw today at USC's pro day, that was significant. I only watched about half of his throwing live, and then I caught the rest of it after because they started doing some interview stuff with some other players. The first half, though, from what I saw live, looked great. And just overall, the big reason so many people care is because he's going to Chicago. I know you know that. And the fact that he was throwing in a combine setting, people didn't get the chance to see that happen earlier in Indianapolis. That was what was so significant today, and I felt like he did a really good job.
What impressed you most? I know there's that one throw, that deep ball, looked like it went about 60, 65 yards on the money, hit the receiver in stride. What kind of impressed you the most from the throws that you saw out there?
Well, I think with Caleb Williams, his tape impresses me the most, so that's sort of a cop-out answer. But today, there was one particular throw he hit along the sideline to Taj Washington, who is going to be a draft guy for USC a little bit later on. That was really impressive, and that probably drew the most crowd reaction. I felt like it was just a nice throw to the sideline, and Washington extended his arms, made a nice catch. You could just tell, even though one of the guys was a transfer from Nevada, for the most part, Williams had a lot of chemistry with the receivers today because they were all his teammates from this past season, and that one jumps out to me. But overall, I feel like if you just watch him play with the pads on, that's what really stands out the most. I try not to be too high and low when it comes to pro day stuff. Ideally, you're looking more at the tape, and I know you know that.
Yeah, it's I like to say, like, pro days are set up for players to not fail. Like, they're set up to succeed and have big days. I believe the broadcast said he threw like 50 balls. What kind of impressed me, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you've watched him a lot more than I have, and I've watched the tape a little bit. It feels like the ball just jumps out of his hand. It just looks so natural and so at ease. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, that's what stood out to me, because we hadn't seen him throw since last season because he sat out the bowl game. So last year, even, it's been a few months, and just the reminder that you get when he was warming up, and then when he started throwing, it was like, okay, yeah, one throw, you can see this is why he's going number one overall. And there's a million other reasons, but it is so natural. It looks so good coming out of his hand. He moves around really well. I think Ryan Russillo on The Ringer said it best. You never really know if a quarterback is going to be good or not at the next level. But Caleb Williams, if I'm going to be wrong about anyone, I'm willing to be wrong about him, and that's how I feel too.
And the receivers he was thrown to, you mentioned there was a transfer from Nevada, but there was two other USC wide receivers that should get drafted, but there was no tight end, if I'm correct.
No tight end. USC's tight ends, they're all coming back next year, but the two receivers, Brendan Rice, who's the son of Jerry Rice, he's probably going to be like a third through fifth round pick, and then Taj Washington, who is USC's leading receiver, a slot guy, a coach's dream, really, really good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a long NFL career as a receiver and special teams guy. He'll probably go a little bit later, like fifth, sixth, or seventh, but a really good player.
And I think I know the answer to this, but you weren't shocked to see all of the Chicago Bears representatives out there, right? I mean, there was like 8 or 9 guys out there just to go see Caleb throw. And I guess they've been out there since Monday. That's what the NFL.com said, or NFL Network said. It wasn't really surprising to you, right?
No, but what was funny, so USC opened spring practice on Tuesday, and Ryan Poles walked right by all the media people waiting to get into practice. And then I would consider myself a big NFL fan, but I guess I had forgotten what Matt Eberflus looked like, and he was right there too. So I tweeted out, oh, Ryan Poles just walked by. And then all the Chicago people, like, that tweet went semi-viral, not like crazy, but it was like my most engaged tweet of the month by a long shot. And then I also tweeted that Eberflus was there. So yeah, not surprised to see them at all. And after the workout that Caleb did today, Eberflus talked to Carl Williams, who's Caleb's dad, said goodbye to him, made a point to go over and say something to him on the way out. So as if we had any more of a reason to think that Caleb's going number one. It's just so clear. I mean, Keenan Allen is there today too, who's now on the Bears, and he has a prior relationship with Caleb Williams. It just seemed to me like and people in Chicago know it's just obviously going to be Caleb Williams going number one overall to the Bears.
That's what I said. Everyone I talked to at the combine, even a month ago, it was just kind of the general direction, and the Bears kind of ushered that next step in by trading Justin Fields, and I would be absolutely shocked if it wasn't Caleb Williams. One thing I didn't note at the end, I don't know if you saw it after practice, they did show it on the NFL Plus stream. Caleb Williams with his teammates, and he loves those guys. Like, he was goofing around with them. They had like handshakes, kind of dance moves and stuff. What is his relationship with those teammates in the locker room?
Amazing. The guys really do love him. No one will say a bad word about him. And one thing that I've talked about all along throughout the pre-draft process is guys will have these little concerns about them here or there, little things. And to me, the only thing that really strikes a guy out is if he doesn't work hard and parties too much. And we've seen that. It's a tale as old as time. Guys who don't think they need to put in the work and deal with distractions off the field, those are the players who don't work out. And Caleb Williams deals with none of that. He does not do anything at all off the field that would be frowned upon, and his teammates absolutely adore him. Center Justin Dietich went on this big soliloquy a couple months ago all about how much he meant to the locker room, and the coaches love him. I think the crying thing after losing to Washington sort of really hurt his image a little bit. And then there were a couple of times where he didn't speak to reporters after the game, and that to me was disappointing, but that doesn't mean he's not going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. So those were two knocks against him. And really, in my opinion, the only two, and I don't even think one of them was a knock. The crying doesn't really bother me all that much. I know older people might feel differently, but to me, I feel like that's a guy wearing his heart on his sleeve. The season didn't go the way he was expecting it to, and I think he's beloved in the locker room for crying. I don't really think people should hold that against him, in my opinion.
That was a game that basically eliminated them, right, from the Pac-12. It was pretty much season-ending loss, right?
Yes, and he had a fumble that he lost, which was a problem for him this year. But other than that, played really, really good football. I think USC scored in the 40s. Like, the offense did its job, and just as the story went on last year, like, the defense just couldn't do anything. So that was a disappointment, and I don't blame him for feeling the way he did.
You mentioned the not going out. He works hard, and in Los Angeles, I mean, that's tough. And that's Hollywood right there. It's the bright lights. If the Bears do take him, he will be going to a big city. So what you're telling me is the Bears shouldn't have to worry about no nightlife, being too big for the stage. He should be able to use that experience in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and even with the media too. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
Certainly. And after winning the Heisman, it started even a little bit before, but he has a team of people around him to, I don't want to say keep him in check, but to make sure he always puts his best foot forward. And he's really well trained from a media perspective. Like, I think 5 or 10 years ago, if guys like him had a posse, people around him, like not even agents, but just people kind of making sure, keeping him in check, like that would sort of be looked at as a negative. And I think with him, it's helped him immensely. And that's just kind of the world we live in now. If you are that big time athlete and you have all this potential, you're going to be a number one pick. It's important to surround yourself with the right people. And I think the Williams family and Caleb himself have done an excellent job of surrounding him with really good people who I don't want to say like without them he'd be in trouble. That's not what I'm trying to say. I just think this group of people has really enhanced him, and he's a professional. He's a younger guy, but he's one of those guys who was so talented, so young, and he burst onto the scene at Oklahoma. And with all the fame and the fortune and everything, he's sort of kept it the same as always. Now there are just some people around him keeping him in check a little bit, but overall, I just feel like he is a good guy at heart and someone who you can absolutely trust. I don't worry about like nightlife being a big problem with him at all.
Where does the quote unquote bad label the diva come from? Is it just social media? People want to have that storyline. Obviously, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I don't see it. You cover the team. You've been around the team. Where does that stuff come from? And I'm guessing it's far from true.
Well, I don't want to throw Oklahoma fans under the bus, but Oklahoma, when Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams left, like they trashed Lincoln more than they trashed Caleb Williams. But a lot of it, I think, starts with them. And maybe someone hearing this will be like, what are you talking about? But I don't think Oklahoma fans were too happy with him. So any chance to throw fuel on the fire, I think they'll take it. So I'd start there, and then I think some of the fashion stuff, like you hear the word diva, he has worn a dress, I think, on a runway or something. He's been on a runway. I don't know if he wore the dress then, but he's been photographed in a dress. So diva and dress, that maybe goes together. Some of the stuff after the game about being a sore loser, I think when Utah beat USC for the second time or the third time in 2 years this past season, he didn't shake anyone's hand on Utah. So not the best look there. The crying, another kind of feminine trait, and I don't want to get canceled for that, but you know what I mean? Diva, tears, feminine. I'm just trying to put it all together when you add that all up, and I think that's where it sort of comes from. But to me, like if this was like a court of law and it's like, where's the smoking gun? What makes him a diva? There's nothing that adds up, nothing that you could point at and say, okay, this is why people feel this way. I don't think social media has been his best friend. I think sometimes he doesn't, like when you read what he says, it doesn't read very well. If you hear him, it's a lot better. And I think when we put out a YouTube video today, some Chicago Bears people were like, oh, I hadn't really heard him talk before. I like him. Sometimes when you read his quotes, it's kind of like, okay. And then his dad too, with the NFL, like if my son's going to be the number one overall pick, we want a stake in the team conversation. There's still a debate about what really went on there. I think people characterize Caleb as a diva a little bit for that. I don't blame his team at all for thinking about it. I don't know how that got out that, oh, my team, we thought about maybe asking for this. And then that's a huge story that blows up.
Yeah.
If you think a thought in your head and you communicate with people and you never plan on acting on whatever you're talking about, is that really a news story? I don't think so. Some people might feel differently. So the fact that they were even thinking about that, I think got him in some hot water. But as time has gone on, he's not asking the Bears for a stake in the team. And that story has gone away as it rightfully should. So I think all of that combined and you get a diva label. And like I said, I don't really think it's warranted.
And one of the bigger examples is it feels like everything that is a negative to him or about him that's been out there in the media hasn't been said by him publicly. I guess one of them was that he doesn't want to play in Chicago. Have you heard anything? Like, is there any rumblings of that at all?
No. And maybe a while ago, like say he won the Heisman again and he was the biggest can't miss prospect of our lifetime. And USC's past season went a little bit better and he just had all the chips and he could do, or maybe he had a little bit more leverage. Maybe then could he have done a power play? And I think that goes back to what I said before. Maybe his team talked about it. Hey, if Chicago's got the number one pick, let's talk about it. Do we want to consider doing something to try to get out of there? Maybe they talked about it. But in all the time that's gone on since, especially recently, I haven't heard anything like that at all. I think it's clear that Chicago has been in touch with his camp. The Keenan Allen trade makes me think that specifically because they have a relationship prior, and it just all roads lead to him getting drafted by the Bears and him going to the Bears and him playing for the Bears. So maybe a long time ago they were thinking about, would Chicago work? I think the Arizona Cardinals too. That was a big thing.
Yeah. Maybe
I don't want to go to Arizona. I think those are all discussions behind the scenes. And as time's gone on, he's realized, hey, let's just go where I go and see what happens.
Yeah. I've got a few more before I let you go, and I appreciate your time again. Besides the off the field, whatever we just talked about, beyond the field, you mentioned the fumbles, a little bit of an issue. Is that the biggest negative in his game?
I think so. And it all goes back to last year. He didn't really trust his offensive line, which I think he had a reason to not trust them because they weren't as good as the line before. And when the going got rough, he sort of put the Superman cape on. And one thing when you read his scouting reports, it's like he can make the superhero play, but sometimes the better play is just to take what's in front of you. And so to me, that's something that can be coached out of him. I don't expect him to have big fumbling issues at the next level. Josh Allen's bigger than he is, but Josh Allen was awful early in his career with ball security, and he was kind of a spaz. And I do not think Caleb Williams is a spaz at all, but I think Josh Allen is an example of you can coach that out of a guy, some of the recklessness. And I think Caleb Williams, he's way less reckless than Josh Allen was, at least his first couple of years in the league, in my opinion, just based on what Caleb did at USC. I think you can sort of compare that more to the NFL than Allen's tape, but Wyoming. But to me, I think what his biggest problem is trying to do too much. And at the NFL level, I think he'll be coached out of that a little bit.
And my last one, it looks like the Bears are going to draft Caleb Williams. As I said, I'd be shocked. You've said it too. What are the Bears getting Caleb Williams if they do draft him at number 1 overall?
I think they're getting a generational prospect, and you just look at the way football's going. You don't want to compare anyone to Patrick Mahomes. That's unfair. But Caleb Williams, he has that elusiveness that is what makes Patrick Mahomes so special. And I think right now, Patrick Mahomes' biggest superpower out of all of them is his brain. And I think Caleb has the potential to be a really, really intelligent player. Won't be Patrick Mahomes the second he steps on the court, but he has every opportunity to be an elite level quarterback because of the traits. I don't look at him and say, okay, here's the one thing that he really needs to work on. Here's his big problem. It's probably ball security, but I think in an NFL system, when he's trained to get it out quicker and he doesn't have to be that best guy on a struggling team, I think the Bears roster is probably a little bit better than USC's roster from last season. That'll be coached out of him. So I think you're getting the Bears are getting a great leader, a great athlete, a guy with all the potential, and he's on the right track right now. It's up to him to go realize that potential. As we know with quarterbacks too, you kind of got to get lucky along the way with a good play caller, good players. A lot has to go right other than just the quarterback doing what he needs to do. So I think he has the chance. And when you're in a position like the Bears, number 1 overall pick, that's all you can ask for, a guy who has a chance to be great. And I think Caleb Williams absolutely has a chance to be great.
Connor, thanks so much for your time, man. Where can everyone follow you on Twitter? Where can everyone read your work?
You can read my work at uscfootball.com. If people want to stay in touch with USC after Caleb goes to the draft, that's your place. And then I'm at Twitter at C_Morrissette.
Awesome. Good stuff, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zach.